Ah. Okay. Fuck. How long do I need to wait for this coffee? Totally fine. I've been spacing out for long enough. Yeah, it's fine. So, today we're implementing more abilities, I think. Casting animation, spellcasting mainly. Let's see where it does crash. I don't actually know. 100%. This spell isn't really set up. So it just crashes here. Oh yeah, this is the issue. Where are we right now? End turn. I think action to trigger hasn't been set here. That's my guess. I don't think it actually says here. Object referent, not set to an instance of an object. So let's go up. Here. So the way this works is we do command input, then we do action initialization. Really know what's happening here. And disabling outlines when spellcasting state equals none. Shouldn't it always be that? Shouldn't it always do that? Oh, it's in the combat module. Right. Is it never set? Hmm. We're setting it to null here. Confused. What was it called? Combat. Just called combat something. We got combat update. And then we have... Oh, it's below. Set combat phase, that's what it's called. And here, an action initialization. I think either way we should set current turn.unit dot combat module dot action to trigger equals action to trigger. Right? Alright, is it drinkable now? Yep. Oh. Okay. So we're not actually using action to trigger anymore. We're just using the action module dot action. But that's bad. Yes. I want this to be current unit current turn dot unit dot combat module dot action to trigger. Action resolution. I don't know if this is needed at all. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I think it is. Let's try again, see what happens now. Alright, that's fine. Now it's crashing, I think, because I am creating an effect object and not setting things properly. So now we need to go to the object database. Here's barrier. am I doing this? This is like completely unnecessary, isn't it? I don't know, whatever. This portrait. Ooh. Oh. Oh, that's spicy. Here's another issue. Take a look here. Object, object detail, object effect. I think I might have to delete a lot of these foreground layers because they don't really matter. And add more objects. But that's gonna complicate the math hard. Oof. Or maybe it won't. Actually. Yeah, it will. Or maybe it won't. Or maybe it will. We'll see. Because there is an issue here. So I have these layers: object, object detail, object effect. Now, what is object detail? I'm honestly not 100% sure, but it could be anything that I attach to something. Anyway, I'll be right back. As I was saying. So, we have object, object detail, object effect, correct? But here's the problem. Foreground is actually not used for spell effects anymore. I feel like that was the intention. I don't know if I actually have like lightning here. Yeah, it was set to foreground effect. But that doesn't actually work. And the reason for that is foreground is now just a layer that's just in front of everything. That's all it is. While the object detail and object effect layers, they are in front of everything on the same Y axis, or the same Y value. Which could maybe be based on the tile instead, I'm not sure, I haven't decided. I think the tile could be better, because then an object that's a size of 2, that's like lined up with the bottom of an object that's the size of 3, would be on the same layer, and I think that would probably be for the best. Either way, the issue here is that there are sometimes persistent effects, like a barrier. And the barrier might even need to have like its own layer. Because what if there's another persistent effect on top of a barrier on a character? How am I gonna draw that if the barrier is already there as well? I could write a system where like a barrier is actually just an object on the object layer, and I do something where I simply sort it in a way where an object that's attached to another object gets sorted behind, but I don't like that. Because I'm just using the list.sort to sort, and it's just so easy. As opposed to writing your own sorting algorithm. Even though I could just Google what the sort looks like, I guess, but I just feel like changing like these to be additional object layers would probably be a good idea, but I'm not sure. Hello, Otto. Like layer sort index. I don't really know what the best way to do this is, but right now I have an index for sorting. Where is it? That works something like this. So we take the current pixel position, then we multiply, we take the size of the map in the x-axis, and we multiply that by 9, because 9 is the amount of layers that I have. And that's to generate space for each index having like a different type of, like having each pixel having those layers available to them. And then we get the size of the map in the y-axis. Then we get pixel position minus the layer. Pixel position y times 3 minus the layer. I know this is like completely unintelligible, but and then I also sort it by, like, if it's in the background section, then it starts at 0. If it's in the object section, the index starts at whatever the max value of these indices are. So basically everything background is sorted before everything object. So it gets rendered in that order. And then it just assigns that to one index, and then the list is sorted. But I don't know if you can do it better with a tuple or something. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I want to do here, really. To be honest. This works right now, but it does have this issue. Where if I put a barrier on an object, and that's object effect, then I don't have space to shoot a lightning strike or any kind of spell on top of that object and put that in a layer that's in front of persistent effects. I don't exactly, again, I don't know what object detail would entail. So it could fit there, but I still feel like we probably don't have enough layers. Isn't this gonna cause overlapping if objects are on the same layer? They're sorted from left to right. So if someone is standing on the left on the same layer, they are drawn on top. of an object to the right. And if they're standing above in the y-axis, then they're rendered behind. If they're standing exactly on top of each other, then I don't know what's gonna happen. But they shouldn't be doing that. I mean, they could maybe do that in exploration mode if we don't have collision, which I think we might not in some cases. Like, these two belong on the same layer. They're both objects. So if she's standing here on the left... Well, it's really hard right now because... they're like... I can't move them on the pixel axis. Hell? There. You see, as long as she's in front, it works. This is fine right now. Normal mapping the sprites? No, they're not normal mapped. I have looked into normal mapping them, but I'm not doing that. It's too much. That's like infinite amounts of work. I don't have that much time. And I don't really know what depth mapping would mean. I just have shadow casting. Let's see on the wall there. There. And you can... Oh, there's a bug there. What's happening? Oh, I've never seen that before. That's actually new. I've actually never seen that happen before. Why is it doing that? Okay, now it's fixed. I just had to update the map. Been playing with Dead Cell's method of sprite capture from 3D models. Yeah, that can work. The only issue there is that it can be hard. It can be hard to avoid the feel that it gets as well. Anyway. Is this incorrect? I'm not sure where it's breaking. But I think this spell is simply not programmed correctly right now. Here. So if we go here to triple stab, and then we split it, and then we go to the barrier. Let's see what we are doing differently now. Trying to avoid hand normal mapping where possible. Yeah. I don't really like I'm not a fan of normal mapping for pixel art that much. I think it's too high resolution, but I'm kind of a pixel art purist, I guess. So I'm not like a huge fan of the look of Octopath Traveler and stuff like that. But I would like to try experimenting with it and making like low resolution normal maps, but hand painting normal maps is so confusing. I don't know how to do it. I need so much time to figure it out. Wrapping my head around like how it should work, like what all the colors exactly mean and all that. It's really hard. So it has hits, light animation, casting, target. Does it need that? I think it does. Perhaps? It does have targeted objects. I think it doesn't need target. And dim stage. That's something that it should just have here, I think. Light size float. That go here? I think so. Int time index. Aw. I don't think that should be needed. Object data module. Now what the heck is this? Anyway. Let's continue here. I've been reworking how my systems work, so I'm like... I'm a bit confused. action state. OT action state of skill. And then we have hits. It doesn't really hit. But I guess it counts as a hit. Deciding between FPS, isometric, or fixed as in choose your own adventure scenes. Yeah. Here the description is. Let's put the description up here, maybe. Get that stuff over with there. Action icon. All right. This spell is set to target team ally, but you can only cast it on enemies. So that's bugged. AP cost 2. It's got a bunch of things here. This is the Wild Arms OST, yeah. Use dual scene is false. Because it's just the cast animation. This action would be like a frame long. Kind of. Because the spell itself, like the spell casting animation, that stage is handled separately. That is not part of the action. And when the spell casting is done, then this action happens. But Rhea wouldn't be set to like this action. How is this gonna work? How does this work? is this action can't just be executed like that. So I think a spell is just going to be loaded into the main controller and then just played that way. And there we have the effect. Alright, let's split this again. So initialize here is just base initialize. And then like nothing. Light size float. It just changes the execution triggers. Light size float should be called current light size. Current dim stage. Target. What does base initialize do? Not much. I feel like I'm not initializing these lists properly. Targeted objects. This one is not initialized at all. Maybe I just meant to do it when they're needed. meaning it should be done there. But how does it work here? I don't actually use the list of targets. Where? What is this? Targeted objects. I don't know what my idea was here, but it's not in use. Because it takes an object as a key, and the value is an integer. It's supposed to just take an object and then be able to read that from some kind of index list, but I don't remember where or what the idea was. Not sure. But really what I need here is I need a target object, which I removed, which we can return again, I suppose. Public LOT object target. And here we create a new effect. For invoking the barrier. And then we are creating an object. But for whatever reason, the object does not end up with a sprite. And that's because it's not... doesn't have a default animation. So how do I handle that? Because what I... Because what I did do was I made objects set themselves to idle as the default. But the barrier, I could set it to have an idle, but it doesn't really. It has a startup, a loop, a flashing when taking damage animation, and an end animation. So I feel like maybe I need a default animation variable somewhere. In action module somewhere. Here we are setting action to idle in init. And that's the issue. It can't be set to idle. It needs something that's default. I think. Anyway, I'll be right back. Ah. Attached anims, including ongoing buff effects. Attached effects, i.e. are they different enough case that they warrant a category of their own? No, what I want really, or like what the way this works is, as you can see, every character has a list of actions, and that's basically just animations, but the logic is tied to it. And I've made every action that's like common be like globally assigned. They just exist somewhere else. I made this action index, which is a static class that just has the indices here for like idle and whatnot. But effects are different. So all I need is I just need an action that's set as the default. Because when an object loads, it needs to have a sprite set. And I don't want to just have to supply a sprite to set just so the game doesn't crash. It should be handled by whatever animation they need to load first. So in the case of characters, that's the idle animation. In the effect of a spell animation, that's depending on the animation itself. It's either just the spell effect, or it's the intro. The barrier has multiple parts because it's a persistent effect, so it needs an animation for coming into existence, and then it needs to have a loop section, and then it needs to have an ending, and I also wanted to have an effect for getting struck. So the barrier needs to have multiple actions. But I don't want to just assign it to idle. I want there to be but one thing I could do is I could do this. That way I don't need a default. I just set it to 0. Right. Well, except that it takes an enum, which is a little unfortunate. In which case, maybe I would need to set it to idle. Nah. So where is init? It's not a list, unfortunately. It's a dictionary, so I can't just fetch 0. And this isn't just an enum. This is an enum class that I've written. Which I don't even know if it is needed anymore for it to be a class. I think it is. I don't remember why I did it. I just wanted it to be easier to type. I don't think I actually need it to be a class anymore. Maybe I can get rid of that. Because before I was writing like a state machine inside of the animator. And I just didn't like, I think I didn't like writing, let's see. Yeah, I didn't like having to write parentheses int before the enums all the time. So I wrote an index instead, or I wrote this so I could just type it in here into a dictionary and I wouldn't have to type parentheses. But I'm not doing that anymore, so I don't think this is actually necessary. So I think this could just be changed to a normal enum. I don't really use any of Unity's functions. So when I say animator, I mean my own animation system. I only use some UI things. Otherwise, I've written my own renderer and everything. I render the game using a compute. What's it called? A compute shader? Is that what it's called? Compute. Yeah, a compute shader. That's 5,000 lines long. Because of the ongoing issues, I'm using interface files for now, keeping the Unity code separate. I'll tackle my own engine when and if it comes to it. I honestly don't really know what interfaces really are used for. I'm using like one. Hello, ho ho, how's it going? Spent years making the ultimate cross-platform compute shader, didn't check to see what it was called. I don't think it's actually even cross-platform. It's HLSL, so it's just like DirectX only. But I would like to write it in Vulkan instead. Just go between files. Okay. Yeah, I want to move over to monogame later. I'm just trying to write, finish this combat prototype. So we have something to work with in Unity before I start looking at transferring it over to monogame. All right, so is this used? This is used. I think these are never really converted to integers anywhere. It's just to check action states. So I think if I just reorder these, action state none. I don't know if I want that, but I guess it could be okay. Then we'd need idle combat, walk, combat walk, run, combat run isn't set there anywhere. I might not have a combat run, but I could have a combat run. I'm not sure. Either way, after run, we've got hurt, death, item, ranged, which doesn't make sense. It shouldn't really be ranged. So yeah, let's delete that. Because ranged is... that's just a skill. Dual idle, dual end, and then casting only. And then skill. I'm not sure if that's gonna break anything. No, that's not part of that. Action state does not contain casting init. Yes, that's because it should just be casting. Hmm. Hello, Cho Cho. How's it going? But here's the thing. I was using final index value here. Where is that used? In a lot of places. No, like one place. So here I create indices for the skills. But this should just be a public enum combat action index. Triple stab equals LOT action state dot skill int. How's the programming going? It's going all right. But it doesn't feel like I need to do the int there. And then here it's going to be skill plus 1. It still doesn't think I need the int there. Here it's skill plus 2. Skill plus 3. Something like that. And then the action dictionary. We could just say that this is LOT action state. No, just an int. That's what the action dictionary takes. And then here, we set action dictionary the int. And then these all need to be LOT action state. And they all need to be cast to int. Ranged, I decided to delete. Dual is called Dual Idle here. I'm gonna rename this to just Dual. This could work. But I do think that we shouldn't have a state that's none. An object shouldn't really ever be in a none state. Should it? Morning, Jono. How's the duning going, Jano? I should be beginning, or I should start joining you over in the deep desert soon. Before you quit the game. Suppose the other option is to provide a null state, the T-pose or ping texture type thing can help catch errors. I can crunch for a minute more. I think I'm gonna crunch for a bit more than that. I'm gonna try to get a full day today. More or less. Assuming I can do writing later too. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we'll settle for not having an like just set it to idle like it was before. Now the issue here is we do have more. So let's make a combat run entry as well. Hurt, death, item, duel, end, casting. This will need to change anyway because there are so many actions here that need to be added at some point. Like talking, any kind of cutscene, animation, all of that shit is going to be here too, right? But I want these that are default to just be here. And then we have combat actions. And then after that, I think are gonna be like special actions, I guess. Cat Landsrod Beacon, found purple pistol. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're like cap points. I saw something about that. Is the last gun even good if you can't shoot people with laser or with shields? Maybe it's good for like breaking walls or some shit. And now then here we can say try get value 0 instead. But what am I doing here really? Current action, set action. Why am I setting current action and then setting action? What am I doing with current action? That's in the action module. But the set action is here too. And that sets current action. So it is literally setting current action twice. What am I doing? We'll see. I heard from someone it's one use only, so that sucks, and its range is 80 meters, but its damage seems to be around 60 with 600 second fire rate. 600 per second fire rate. In theory, it should shred any vehicle. Okay. I mean, that could be useful. Could be annoying. Is this good? Because the issue is I have to change how this works everywhere. Which, thankfully, is why I haven't really set up more than 2 units right now. I genuinely don't know why it was like that. Doesn't even seem to make any sense. But then here now we have the barrier. So now the barrier needs to have its own little list. Which we can honestly call whatever we want. Right now the barrier is just one action here. Yeah, sure. It just needs to have the one action. And then in the update, we handle how it works. But here it does have loop, flash, outro. But this is old, isn't it? Yeah, because here we load the effect for the barrier. Oh, this is so confusing. Oh, I'm so confused. Oh. Ay. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm like adding the animation to the action itself. But that's actually incorrect. So the way it works is that when a character like moves or attacks or does anything, they are assigned the correct action, and then the action itself contains the animations, and the animations or the sprite is set based on what time we are or what time index we are in the action. So the action plays, does its logic, and then based on the time we set the sprite. But spells work a little differently. So I gotta close this window, Jesus Christ. So basically what happens is that somebody casting a spell will enter their casting animation, and if it's a spell that has 0 cast time, they will play the entire cast animation immediately, then cast the spell. If it's a cast time spell, they will play their intro, and then they will transition into the loop section of their casting animation. And then when it becomes their turn again to cast it, they will play the end cast animation. And then there's an action for the spell itself. However, this is where things get a little bit confusing. Because the spell itself, the action shouldn't really do anything. It should just be... the action should begin to play, and then it should have a length. But the length should only be like... when in the spell it should spawn effects. Because you might have... like, spells might do anything, you know? So they might create different things, special effects, whatever. But in this case, for the barrier, all it needs to do is it needs to create a barrier on a character. And the way it needs to work is that once the character finishes casting, the character goes back to idle, and the main controller is assigned the spell as an action. So no character is playing out the spell, it's the main controller that's playing it. And the spell itself, in its logic, it needs to create an effect object. And that effect, that object is the one that will play the animation for the barrier. Or rather, the action for the barrier. Meaning setting the sprite and playing the intro animation, the loop animation, reacting to the target taking damage, those kind of things. So here in the spell, it doesn't really need to have any like animations or anything, because it doesn't. Or well, this does actually, because this is the action module for the spell. While here we have an action. Action database. So here we have this here, effect func list. It creates a new effect, which is a barrier. The barrier effect has a list of objects. Entity data list. We create, or we fetch the core data for the barrier, and then we make a list of effect objects that we create in the main controller using create object with this core data information. And in here, this object here has a, this is actually an action module. I think it does it. I need to change it for everyone. Action module. Here we then have the action that gets returned. Action module for the barrier, which then is this. And this is where it needs to have some logic implemented. Okay. I think it might have most of it here already, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm gonna switch chair. Oof. Tiny doesn't need to be. Something like that, maybe. Because I actually have logic written here. But I don't know how much of it actually works. But yes, in that case, if this is the barrier, Huh. How should I handle this? Because here, the way it works, I have the barrier here. That's the action. Spells Astra Templar Barrier. Maybe... because it needs to load the actions that it needs to play from somewhere. Like, this is how an action works here. This is idle. Idle has a list of animations and all of that. It's got the action length based on the animations and whatnot. So for the barrier itself, I kind of wonder if it should have several sub-actions. Like, make it be something like public static class barrier test. Like that. And then we wrap it. And then inside here, we have one class that's the barrier, which I want to rename to something else, like cast or spell or something. But then it would be spells, Astra Templar Barrier spell. But I think maybe that would be okay. And then here we have a public class barrier front. And here we have a public class back. Is the barrier an action or a spell? Both? That's the thing. An action is just something that happens. Or that it's basically an animation. Being idle is an action. Walking is an action. Attacking is an action. Casting is an action. But it becomes complicated with how I'm doing this, because the barrier itself, the initial action for casting it and creating the barrier, that's an action. But the barrier needs to create an effect, and the effect itself is a separate type of object that handles effects. So, for example, I might have like a lightning storm effect. I might have a spell called Lightning Storm, and that spell will create a new object that's an effect called Lightning Storm, and that effect will handle how the effect plays out, because the effect might consist of multiple objects. So it's basically a controller for the effect. So we create the lightning storm effect, and then the lightning storm effect will create like a lightning strike. It might create like 5 or 10 lightning strikes, and then it'll handle those. And once like all of them have been created and played out, it will delete them and then delete itself. And that's why it becomes a little tricky, because an action is typically kind of the same thing as an animation. So when my character uses triple stab, that's an action, but it's also an animation because she's stabbing somebody, and the action itself contains both the animation and like all the damage variables and stuff like that. But when it's a spell, the character itself doesn't get like assigned the spell as an action or an animation, but rather like she goes into casting animation, and when the casting is finished, the spell action gets assigned to the main controller, where it then gets played out to generate whatever effects the spell might generate. Because the character, if I set the action to the character, then like that doesn't contain an animation for her. So like every spell is an effect. That sounds like a multiple action spell, but it triggers immediately. Persistent spells last over multiple turns and have multiple states, start, idle, end. It's meant to be for everything, right? So an effect will just be persistent until it doesn't need to be persistent anymore. Right? So whether it's a spell that is just generated and then like strikes a lightning strike once and then that's it, or if it's a barrier that's persistent over multiple turns, or if it's a multi object animation, like some kind of meteor shower or lightning storm or whatever you might have, all of them would use the same solution, which would be just an effect controller that handles all of that. But the tricky part now then is, in my action database, I already have a barrier, right? And the barrier is actually just the initial phase where the system itself creates the animation, or creates the effect. Which means that I need to have more actions here for the barrier itself, so that when the barrier has been created, there's an action to assign to the effect object. And that's where we are now. Oh, there's always something. It doesn't necessarily need to be like that either. If we're gonna complicate it further, the barrier itself could just contain everything. And then I just assign first we assign the barrier action to the system, and then we just have like a certain section in here in the barrier in its update or in its behavior. That is the system part. And then there's another section that's the behavior for the animations. And then when I assign the only bad part about that really is that I'd have to assign multiple like full barrier actions to several different objects. And it would just load a bunch of unnecessary data. No. I do have effects, right? Like I have an effect database, and there I have an object. Barrier, entity list, front, core data. Create object. An LOT effect has a play effect, destroy effect. Just thinking what would make sense here. Or at least, I hope that my brain will start thinking soon. Good morning, Kibbs. Glad you're fixing your sleep schedule, but I think you're overdoing it a bit. Or are you going to bed now? Which one is this? Just working on lore for the second age before transitioning back to third age. Alright. You're welcome, Simply Green. I'm a little tired. I might push through like an extra hour now. with skipping the break and then just give up for today. I just woke up with the great idea, death to the enemies of mankind. Oh, alright, alright. Alright. I have been working on the Red Sun. What got you stumped? I don't know. I'm just tired. Yesterday, I was just super tired yesterday. I'm still a bit tired, but it's better today. I do have some questions later, Kibs, for the Red Sun. There are some things in the beginning that I don't really understand. But we can tackle that later. But right now... No, I'm not overdoing it. I'm underdoing. Yeah, if you're still available, it won't be that long. Yeah, we can meet then. Plus tomorrow is midsummer, so I won't be able to work tomorrow. Because I have to go to my parents. Oof. Wait, it's Saturday though. Why is my mom saying it's Friday? Did she say Saturday? Am I just retarded? No, it's the 20th. Fine. That's tomorrow. Oh. Good job on putting the carrier together, Kibbleman. Good job, Kibbleman. I think no matter what, the effects do need actions, which means I do think that I need to separate this into like, instead of this being barrier, this should be like spell. And this is barrier. And And then this is front and this is back. And these, the light animation. I think it should be in the spell. Maybe? No. It should be in the effect. The dim stages should probably be in the spell. All I did was fly escort for our allies, which netted us 25k spice for the cut. That's a lot of spice. It's like 25 spice. That's like 250. Why is it being a dick? New value animation, and here's it's a class? It's because light animation doesn't exist here. It's because this is not public front. Because it goes in here. And here we need value animation, light animation, like that. I'm waiting, ready and thrilled, and with 2 days off today and tomorrow. As for me, I gotta get back to writing. We'll have stream on. Sounds good, kid. I need some Wawa. So this basically needs to have most of this stuff. Let's just copy everything and delete what we don't need. I think that will be the easiest method here. This is barrier front, action state, skill, whatever, it doesn't matter. Action icon. Apparently isn't needed. Oh yeah, it's because this is not a combat action. If we look up here, this is a combat action. And this is not. This is just an action. It doesn't have hits. It doesn't have any of these. It doesn't have costs, cooldowns, anything like that. It's just... It doesn't have an effect. It might have audio. Combat action, if we look here. Audio clips. Let's move that down to action. Okay. Apparently, I've made an action serializable, which... not so sure it should be. So if... Wait, what? I'm so confused. Huh? Look, like... Huh? Why can this be serialized? Is it because I'm not using system here? Okay, yeah. Fair enough. But again, I don't really think I want to serialize it. Yeah. Let's not. This is just for fields. Yeah. Alright. We can keep the non-serialized, it's fine. But yeah, we put audio clips in the base action, because the way this works is that I have actions, and those are a lot more lightweight, like walking, idle, basic actions that you do in non-combat scenarios. They're just actions. Combat actions inherit from action, and they contain a lot more stuff. Range, status effect, damage type, target team, these kind of things. Costs. And then in the action database, everything is just stored as actions, but some of them can be combat actions. Why is this throwing an error? Am I stupid? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. A little bit. Right. It's because I put these things outside of the bounds of this. It should be inside the constructor. Anyway. Let's do this again. So now I'm like confused. Right, so we don't need any of this. We already have action, ID, team stages we don't need. Yeah, so basically I just deleted everything, and that's how it should be. Yeah. Except that this action needs to load stuff here. Here we have an animation list. Here we need to do some things. Execution triggers. Yes, that execution triggers do need to be a thing here, but it might be already. Spell. No, it's not. Here. But it's a list of one boolean. And then as we initialize, we need to say for. I'll just copy it. There. We set all the executions to false as we initialize the action. And then down here, this is where we set the triggers. Here it says execution triggers 0. Here I had it was in hits before. but now its execution triggers 0 equals true. And then down here it says oh, I removed it. Now that shouldn't be removed. Wait, base and behavior. What does base and behavior do? Yeah, it checks execution triggers. And then it iterates through the triggers that have not executed, and then it triggers them. So the way it works is like, at certain intervals in the time index, when you're playing an animation, it will trigger certain effects or certain events. For example, an enemy taking damage or whatever. But I'm safeguarding it because you never know. Like, the computer might have a giga lag spike, and it might just skip all the way to the end of the action immediately. And if that happens, before it ends it, it needs to be able to check, did everything that's supposed to happen happen? And if it didn't, then it just makes it happen before it ends it. So that units always take the damage they're supposed to, the effects always get applied, etc. Right. Set action by index. And this is now LOT action state dot dual as an int. And then here, we're doing the hits thing there, but we don't need to do that. Set command execution phase 4 is no longer the case. All we're doing is we're doing base.end behavior, and then we set the user back to dual here. I was trying to remove as much code here as possible and just put it in there so I didn't have to write like a million things. I think what's gonna happen here in this end behavior is that we're gonna say main controller, or if main controller dot action to trigger equals this, then main controller of action to trigger equals no. Set action to trigger to null. That's how it works. I just like lost consciousness, by the way. I was just like completely zonked out. I have no idea what just happened. Yo, what's your theme? I don't know what you mean. Do you mean the music? Visual Studio theme is literally just default, dude. You might be using Visual Studio Code. This is Visual Studio. Whatever the fuck. I don't know, Enterprise. Community. This morning I had an Alzheimer moment and I forgot how to turn on my screen. Yeah. You turned your screen off? Are you one of those boomers who turned your screen off so it doesn't waste power in energy saving mode? That's what my mom does. It's like saving 10 cents a month. Turning it off. Man, I remember having speakers that you'd push a button to turn on, and computers were so much better in the past, when everything was shit. I turn it off, but not for that reason. I just do, and so it's a habit. Fair enough. I had a pair of surround speakers when I was a kid, and for some reason they picked up radio signals. So, and it was like a special frequency only, because it didn't pick it up all the time. It only picked it up at night, and it was always foreign languages. So it wasn't picking up like Swedish radio signals, it was picking up something else. It was super weird. And it wasn't in English either. It was like some Ruski language. I thought that was really cool. I always tried to listen to it and what they said, but I couldn't understand anything. Still have those speakers. This isn't really that complicated. It does need a target. Think. Remember the old radio we had in the first house I lived in as a kid? Love the old green display and all the various knobs and thingy bobs I like to play with. Yeah. So here we have an effect database, barrier. I mean, this doesn't necessarily work. I might need to add another variable for local position. Oh! The reason for that here, the way it works is you have an effect that controls the effect objects, and right now it's not very advanced, so it's just like handling the barrier itself. Because that's what I've been working on, the barrier, the lightning strike. So the barrier consists of two objects, potentially. It can have a front, and it's a front and a back, because there might be like a curvature that goes behind the character, because the barrier might have some kind of like outline at the bottom where it meets the ground that then needs to go behind the character, and that means that it needs to consist of two parts. So you need to have a front part and a back part. And the effect then tracks the target, because it's a that's the idea, at least. So the effect itself, the effect controller, tracks the target and positions itself on top of the target, right? And that way the barrier follows the character as it moves. But what if you have some other spell? Like, just to take some example from some other game, Lightning Shield in World of Warcraft, where you have spinning globes around you. If those are going to be able to spin like that while you're moving, then they're going to need to have some kind of local position, because it needs to have its position set relative to the effect controller. Otherwise, If I move and I just set all of the positions like I'm doing now to the new position, then they're all just gonna be placed in the middle. But I think a spin like that would also be animated in the effect. It wouldn't be like each globe that would animate. Because I think an action should really just be like the animation, the static animation for the most part. And if the effects themselves need to move or be like handled relative to each other in any way, it's the effect controller that should do that. Because otherwise it becomes really complicated to like sync them. Because they're all gonna have to be able to talk to each other and compare themselves to the others. To be able to spin and be like, okay, are we like actually synced right now? And to hammer that point home, we can say public override play effect here. Oh, that's a bool. What does play effect do? Slated for deletion. Yeah, I think I want to change this. The idea here is that we update the effects, and as we play it, it sets this boolean here, effect to be deleted, and if it needs to be deleted, then it gets destroyed. But I think I'm not gonna do it this way. The only way I'm doing this is so that I don't have to iterate through all the effects again. But maybe we'll do something like this instead. Because the active effect lists, that's an effect. So if we make a list here called LOT effect, let's actually do it here. Effects to delete. Equals new list LOT effect. And And then here we're gonna say effects to delete dot clear. And then we're gonna say play effect is now void. It doesn't return that. Well, it can still return, I guess. And then here, slated for deletion. We don't need to return that. We just do that. And then as we iterate through, what the hell did I just do? I'm so confused. Effect update. Here. Yeah. So we do that. And then we do this. And then instead of do if effect to be deleted, we're gonna say if slated for deletion. Then we say effects to delete dot add this. And then here we say for active effects list dot count effects to delete dot count. We're gonna say active effect list dot destroy effect. What does that do? That removes it from the active effect list. And then we just say effects to delete dot clear. Right? I'll be right back. Oof. Alright, so that's there. But we'll handle the position later. That's kind of how I'm approaching it right now. Like, I try to implement attacking with just a melee attack, and then we solve the problems that arise there. Then I implement a spell, and we solve the problems that arise there, and then I implement another type of spell, and then we solve those problems. So this is a barrier effect. But I don't really like the base effect. It does all this stuff. I don't like that it tracks here. That's bad. But we can make that a function. See, here we do set position. Handle position change. Right, that's where we do something like this. Something like that. I do think that the position should maybe be a struct or something. Because here, the modified position is a vector 3 int, right? But I kind of think that, because what I'm doing here is to fetch the modified position raw. I have a bunch of positional modifiers. So I fetch the internal position, plus movement preview modifier, dual scene position modifier, combat position modifier, misc position modifier, hit shake modifier. And that's the final position, the modified position that we get. But these are all just separate vector 3s. And I kind of wonder if it should be a struct. Maybe not. Maybe the modifiers could be a struct. And the reason I say that is because here I'm setting the position of the barrier. And I just wonder if the barrier not using modifiers to alter its position, like if you were in combat, etc., that it might somehow mess with like lighting systems or like it becoming not visible behind buildings or other strange behavior. I'm not so sure. Let's deal with that later. A new card already? What? Dude, does time really fly that fast? Felt like I just got my last bank card. What the fuck? Yeah, I guess. Jesus, that's depressing. All right. Ba. It would be nice to figure this out. I'm not sure we're gonna get there today. Doing stuff with LOT effects in effect database. Split barrier action into spell and effect parts. On the to-do list.
I think that's gonna be it. Not as long as I would have liked, but I did skip a break. But I think I'm gonna go for a little walk. Tomorrow we won't be doing anything. We'll see. I might try to make tomorrow up on Saturday. But we'll see. How that works out. Either way, I think that's it for now. Yeah, I'll be back later tonight. Until then, thanks for hanging.